to do a video on hoarding, obviously.
Right.
And I wanted to talk about you, of course, and you growing up in a home with parents that were hoarders, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So share with me what that was like as a little girl. I mean, did you understand that?
I did not understand that. That was a way of life for us. And grew up in times where, you didn't have a lot. So therefore, you kind of saved everything. We didn't have a whole lot of money. So it was anything you could find and keep that you may have to use in the future. So
You had a lot of stuff.
a lot of stuff that was not really worth anything.
Were you ever embarrassed having your girlfriends over?
At times, yes, I think about it as an adult, and I didn't know back then, so it wasn't really an embarrassment, I don't believe. It was just, again, that's how we lived.
As a little girl, and I would agree that when I came into your home, it was fun to me because you always had so much stuff.
Right.
So you and I would always really be more entertained with the notion of cleaning. I mean, I remember we like to get down dirty and clean, and we were just little kids because
Yes.
it was something to do. It was just fun, and it was finding all this stuff and cleaning. But then the next day, what we cleaned, like in the kitchen, the cupboards again would be full, the table would be full, and it'd be back to being all hoarded again.
And that was the thing, when we were in the basement, again, where, oh my goodness, that was a nightmare. The whole
But
thing
we had fun with it was fun though. I mean, like seriously, I just remember you guys always had so much cool stuff. We
it was
always
like a
wanted to go
treasure
through-
hunt.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a treasure hunt because we
Right.
never knew what we would find. So it's like, okay, what's this? Where did this come from? How do we play with this? What do we do? So yeah.
But we wanted to clean a space that would be like our own little room and
Yes.
our little play area. So I remember we spent a lot of time cleaning to have our own little area that we could play in. And that's when we come across the infamous crayons.
Yes, the crayons. I remember them on the shelf in the basement. And you and I were going through all that stuff, and there were melted crayons. And you were like, well, just throw these away. Just throw them away. And I'm like, no, we can't. They're crayons. We can't throw away our crayons. And I look back at that and I laugh. I'm like, oh my goodness. And then, of course, cleaning my mother's house after she left there and finding some melted crayons. And
Were they the same crayons?
Yeah, they had to be. They had to be. So
Right.
they were down there for many, many years.
Well, probably 50 years, right?
Probably, yes. Yes. It never seemed to be anything different to me. I mean, that was just the way that we were.
So your parents, would you consider both of them hoarders, or was it just one more so than the other?
I would say both of them. I grew up in a hoarder house, and my family, I have two siblings that are still hoarders. The background of my family, my mother is bipolar. And so therefore she was here and there, just you never knew what she was going to do, what she was going to be. So I think that had a lot to do with that. It's an illness. It really is an illness.
Why do you say that?
Because
Why do you think hoarding is an illness?
Because people hoard for like memories, and they don't want to let go of things like that. It's almost trauma. Trauma causes hoarding, I do believe. Being that I grew up with that, and what my mother was and my father was an alcoholic, so therefore there was illness all through, and their hoarding was part of that illness.
Because of your father's alcoholism, you think your mom was in need of gathering and getting things to fill a void from your father's alcoholism? Or no?
Yes. It truly is an illness. I think if people can get help, psychologically get help to find out what it is that makes them hoard or keep things like melted crayons.
Well, right,
So,
but there's different levels of hoarding, as we know. So, what I remember as a child in your home, it wasn't necessarily dirty.
right.
There was just a lot of stuff,
Yes.
So then you get into hoarding where people are just complete pigs. That's pretty
Right.
blunt. So there's different levels of it.
Yes.
And I would say the way you were raised was more about just having so much shit around you. The
Hmm.
home you were raised in, grew up in, was finally your mother moves out of the home and sells the home. And because it was so hoarded, tell me that story. This is an interesting story. The person that bought it really was going to pay to have all that shit just taken out and put in a dump.
Yes.
And your sister said, no, I want to go through everything.
Everything. Yes, it was everything. And
what was that like? I want to tell me what that was like for you being present with that.
Oh, it was difficult only because I kept telling my sister that she doesn't need these things. Some of it wasn't melted crayons, but it was pretty darn close. So
Right.
that didn't need to be kept. It took forever to get the house clean. Well, or organized, I guess. She had items set aside that she wanted to take to her home or give to Goodwill. And again, because the things had been in the basement for so long, most of the stuff wasn't worth anything.
Right.
And we had to have an estate sale. And the estate sale people, again, took a long time to go through and determine what was worth anything. So, and the gentleman that purchased the house, yes, he said, whatever's left, I will take care of it. So he put it in a dumpster and took it away because it wasn't useful. Nobody could use these items.
And then you married a man that was from the same kind of family. I mean, your first husband was a hoarder.
Yes.
And his parents were hoarders as well.
Very much. Very much.
So
yes.
In that relationship, you really carried on pretty much as a hoarder then.
Yes. We had a house fire and therefore lost everything. And so therefore you have nothing. You have to start from scratch. And when you start from scratch, you have basically your basics. So that kind of made it a little bit easier, to be able to get.
I remember that. I remember that home, and from what I recall, we were in our probably 20s by then. Yes, 20s, I'd say.
Yes.
And that home was hoarded.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And that's my children grew up with that.
So your children growing up in a hoarded because it was hoarded. I mean, the home you had, that home, and it seemed like after that fire, then you moved into that other house, and that home was hoarded as well. So after that fire, did that mess you up psychologically as far as you lost everything? So now I'm gonna hold on to everything again.
And that was it. And that's what happened to my youngest child. She felt that she needed to basically keep everything because she was always afraid that there was going to be a fire, so she always packed up her stuff, the stuff that she wanted and cared for, and took it with her to her grandparents' home.
So you have 2 kids, and out of the 2 daughters, only one of them became a hoarder.
Yes, and she's breaking that cycle also.
And that's why I question the mental illness or calling it a mental health issue, because you have 2 kids that were raised by you and with the same upbringing, exact same upbringing, and one said no and one did it, and do either one of them look at that as a mental health issue?
I don't think so.
But you also hear stories of people that weren't raised in a hoarder situation, but through life become a hoarder.
And again, that's where I think the mental part comes in, because something traumatic had to happen to these people for them to be hoarders like that. I believe. That's just my opinion, but
When did it change for you? When did you say, this, I don't want to do this. I need to understand my psychology on why I'm doing these things.
it was after my divorce. I found myself after my divorce, and I knew who I was and who I wanted to be. So therefore, that again breaks the cycle of not wanting to be in that space anymore.
You have had the awareness, the consciousness that this is not how I choose to live anymore.
Right. And that's it. It's a choice.
The marriage you're in now, your husband now, when he says, do you want this? Do you need this? How are you able to let things go? Or do you
Yes.
still hold on a little bit to the hoarding?
I do let things go. There are some things that I still keep. Well, I have good days and bad days. There are days when I just go, okay, today's the day to clean, and things go in the trash. And I'm going, why am I holding on to this? What is this? What is this doing for me? And it's absolutely nothing. And then there are other days when, yes, I'm still like, well, again, we could use this for something. And my husband's like, no, we can't. We're going to throw it away. And I go, okay.
And I honestly have not been around a lot of hoarders in my life until I moved into this park.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly have been blown away with how many hoarders are in this park.
Mm-hmm.
And I told the lady when I rented it to her, I said, I don't want a hoarder. I said, I spent a long time cleaning this home, and I just do not want a hoarder in here. She's like, oh no, my family, they're hoarders, but I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
She's a hoarder.
Uh-huh.
So I do a little research and find out that, you can't evict somebody for hoarding.
No.
Because it is considered mental health issue.
Mm-hmm.
Am I being harsh? Or do I need a little compassion? Because I rented it out, it kind of pissed me off because I was responsible for it.
Right.
And then to find out there's nothing I can do about it once she's in.
Right. Because you can't be evicted for being a hoarder. Okay.
But I can see the kitchen, from counter to ceiling is stocked food. I'm seeing the hoarder with food in her, mostly food, and then material things. She'll, no matter what, we're on this group called the Buy Nothing group, right? And she's on there too. She'll want everything, and she has no use for it because it's free. And I'll see it in her carport. It's like, why did you want that? You're not even using it.
Mm-hmm. Because it's things.
And
it's filling that void of needing friends, companions.
And this was like in here was like beyond extreme. And my neighbor is, both of them are hoarders, but they never even come out of their home. I've never been invited in. And that's the other thing too. When you can't have anyone over, you don't let anybody in, you keep windows closed, you keep it all locked up.
It's their sanctuary and no one comes in.
And then ladies over here, and they're dead now, but they literally, that was dirty hoarders over there.
Mm-hmm.
And I went into that home and oh my God, that was the worst. I'm going to show a picture. It looks like a penis in a pickle jar. I'm not kidding. It was so gross. It was gross, Carol. Mike wouldn't even go in there. He's like, I'm not going. I don't know what the fuck's in there. It was bad. So you have compassion, but on the other hand, you question it too.
Absolutely.
Meaning that people need to take responsibility for their own lives, right?
Yes.
And nobody was going to change you. You needed to step up and do that for yourself.
Yes.
So people yelling at you or calling you, a hoarder or whatever, that was just going to make it worse.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
You needed for people to just back the fuck up and let you within yourself know that you needed to look at it while you're doing this behavior.
Yes. And that's a lot of it. Look inside yourself and see what you really want, because that's not living. It's not living at all.
The biggest thing with me was talking more about the mental illness too, is trying to have a little understanding. Maybe I need to have a little understanding in that, but I'm not an enabler either. And I don't really walk on eggshells because that's the way they choose to live. That's their choice, not mine.
you did not grow up that way.
Right.
So, but you
But
did
I and
see.
yeah, but I kind
Yeah.
of did with you. But the thing again is with us. I mean, we were best friends. I mean, we
Yep.
would make everything work. None of that ever bothered me as a kid,
Yeah.
ever. You know. Oh, one thing did though. Putting your freaking chewing gum on the bedside. Oh, you
Oh, you and
remember.
your chewing gum.
I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this chewing gum shit.
Maybe I scarred you for life. I don't know.
You did scar me for life on that one.
Can you feel a little love?